Hi, everybody. Welcome to our latest edition of the BC Strategies podcasts. And we're on familiar territory here. We usually talk about event wrap ups on these because it's a really handy way to get a bunch of people who were there to share their thoughts in one place. And that's why you come to BC Strategies. So I am going to be your friendly moderator today. And joining me is the best way to say it is NK3. Nicolas De Kouchkovsky, and of course, Blair Pleasant. So the three of us were there. Regrets from Thomas Brannan, who is one of our also BC experts who was there in force. He won't be here today, but he did a really nice LinkedIn wrap-up video post, as he always does. And you may hear some similar chatter from us here today, but here we are. So we have seen I think the best of Verint from the last probably couple of events, but for me, this was the best one. Well done overall in terms of size. I think they had about 1,000 people there. And aside from the over air conditioned hotel and humidity and rain outside, there was no safe place to go. So what else are you going to do but sit in the sessions? Well, Blair, why don't you start off? I guess you and I can give a high level take, and then we'll bring in Nicholas for a few more things.
Sure. The air conditioning was out of control. So basically, the theme was the same as last year. It was AI business outcomes now. But this year, it was all about hearing from customers and the outcomes that customers have achieved. So Verint introduced their bots like 2 years ago, and it was different. It was interesting. Some of us thought, they were on the right track. Some of us not so sure, but obviously they knew what they were doing. So this year, it's all about CX automation and improving CX while lowering costs and the ability to do both simultaneously. So last year, they talked about, how companies can get business outcomes. And this year, it was all about hearing from customers, and about the business outcomes that they're doing. So like practically every session, had a customer presenting, and they talked about the business outcomes that they're getting on the Verint tools that they're using. So this year, another theme was stronger, faster, measurable outcomes. So they talked about how customers are getting, they're driving agent capacity, they're driving CX, they're increasing revenue, and really getting those stronger, faster, measurable outcomes. And one thing they did that was interesting was they created a value dashboard in their platform. So you can see in the dashboard what value is being created and if the value increases or decreases. So again, it's all about getting those business outcomes and that value. And another thing that they talked about that's a big differentiation is that their AI can work with on-prem systems. So they're saying you don't have to rip out what you've got. If you're on an on-prem system, that's great. You can still put our AI on top of that. So even though their AI is in the cloud, they're working with on-prem systems and cloud systems. So you don't have to, again, do a rip and replace. Another thing they talked about was starting small. So many companies talk about, go fast and break things, move fast and break things. That's not the Verint approach. They're really talking about start small, show the value, prove the value and then scale. So start with one bot and then prove the business value and then add more bots. So a lot of the customers that I spoke to start with things like the summarization or the wrap-up bot, because that's a really easy use case to get value out of. And then from there, they can prove the value, show that it works, and then add another bot and then another bot, and then really scale from there. I was impressed that pretty much all of the customers that I spoke to, during sessions or, during lunch and different times, they were all using AI in some form or another. There was only one customer that wasn't, and that's because he worked for a government agency in Canada, and they were still evaluating AI and, weren't sure really how to get started. But everyone else was like, yeah, of course we're using AI. We're using this bot and that bot and whatever. The last thing I'll talk about was they made a couple announcements. There was an intraday spike bot that was really impressive that we can talk about. But the thing that really resonated with the audience and with the customers that I spoke to was the Verint IVA. And Heather Richards did a great demo and overview about the Verint IVA, and the customers that I spoke to were like, I want that now. So I think Verint's doing a lot of the right things. I think a couple of years ago when they talked about open CCaaS, we were like, we're not sure what they're doing. And then when they started talking about bots, it's like, okay, we'll see. But I think this year they really did prove that they're onto something and they've got a good strategy. And their customers are definitely seeing the value. So I will stop there now and let someone else talk.
All right, that's great, and I'm with you. Feel the same way about this stuff. So before I just hand off to Nicolas, just two things on that. One is I think one of the reality checks of this was that last year there were probably fewer customers getting real results, but also not ready to talk about it. I think this year there's enough comfort level that people are more open to sharing what they're doing. So there's more to work with there, and I think we're going to see even more and more stories along this line. And I think, we were at the NICE event, Blair. Nicolas, I'm not sure if you were at the NICE event. You were? Mm-hmm. So very big difference to me is that, like, Verint is taking a very tactical approach here with the very specific bots with specific use cases, kind of a Lego approach to building up something.
And they even gave us Legos.
Yeah, and we did. I was waiting for that one. Yeah, I got my little kit here. But compare that to, how NICE is talking about the same situation. Genesis, all the big players, they're presenting a very strategic vision for CX, which is very much built around all those integrations across the organization, ServiceNow partnerships, very different, much bigger and more ambitious type of approach. So I'm all for what Dan Bogner and his guys are doing. I mean, it's a very more relatable approach to this stuff. And like you say, you can fail fast. If a bot doesn't work, drop it, move on to another one. Eventually you'll find something that lines up there. And the other thing about this was how they are being very practical in their approach. And, like you say, a lot of people are still new with AI and they don't presume a lot of prior knowledge with this. They're making it easy to set up. And this no-code approach that they take, they really emphasize the ease of developing these bots to build, these applications. Let me stop there and bring Nicolas in. I'll come back with a few more thoughts.
Yeah, I would echo what you guys just said 2 years ago when this new vision was released. It was both praised, but it was such a pivot for Verint coming from the WFO/WEM space, having also pretty large portfolio. People needed to kind of see the results. And fast forward to now, 2 years later, it's pretty striking that the vision that was then shared has remained very consistent. And it is yielding a lot of results. And it's interesting to take it two ways. First, from the approach and the recommendation that Verint is doing align very much with my research on what customer wants right now. They want a step-by-step, use case-driven approach, but not technology-driven, outcome-driven. And striking the balance between the use case and being able to impact outcome is no easy job. There's a lot of research I've done around striking the in-between balance through a concept of jobs to be done. And all the approach that consistently we've heard addresses all those issues. The ability to start small with a pilot. They have a pilot approach where basically if it doesn't work, you don't pay anything. After the pilot, and you can do A/B testing, you can expand both in terms of coverage of use cases, in terms of actual usage. So, and then you can add some new bots. They created an army of more than 50 bots. Some of us were trying to list them all. So this go-to-market implementation is very much aligned to where the market is and what the market needs right now.
So Nicolas, I want to just,
yeah,
I just want to add one thing. So you talked about that pilot approach and that if companies don't get the results, then they just don't pay. And Verint said that so far, nobody has had to do that. Everyone was satisfied with the results, and there was no one who said, no, I'm not getting the results and I'm not doing this.
Yeah. The second thing, if I move a bit on the technology side, their architecture was one of the first to elevate the role of the data platform. So they have the data hub in the middle. Two, they created an AI approach which is open from the standpoint that you can choose your model, use some of theirs, and you have that freedom. I think one of the example was an healthcare company that had invested on a very specific model for, I think, transcription, that they were able to swap instead of theirs. So a very open platform from the model standpoint. Two, from as well the openness in terms of contact center platform and infrastructure. They are integrated with multiple platforms, whether on premises or in the cloud. And they were using this slogan, "We love you the way you are," to express that their armies of bots can accommodate whatever infrastructure they have at whichever stage they are in the journey. So nothing changed fundamentally from the vision standpoint as launched 2 years ago, but Verint was able to convey that it was happening, and the consistency of the messages for the last 2 years gave more power. So we were able to some extent, take stock of the new Verint. That's my takeaway.
Yeah, yeah, and Nicholas, just to amplify a bit about what you just said there about, we'll love you the way you are, and you can take this like piecemeal approach. I thought, well, first of all, I think it's another thing that tells us that they are well aligned with the market is I think the vast majority of use cases that get profiled and what their customers were talking about were internal. They were operational things, not really about agent experience, not really about direct impact on CX, which is where most of the tier one vendors are talking. So they're getting into something that resonates right away for buyers. Say, no, we need to automate, we need to reduce costs, be more efficient. And it's really mostly about workflows. Most of what they talked about were things that are behind the scenes that nobody sees. So it takes a bit of pressure off the agents and the supervisors. I know that comes kind of downstream, but this is really about making the operations run more smoothly. And I think they've hit on that really well. And another thing about timing being good, I mean, in the analyst session the first day, Jamie Merritt talked about the MIT study. It's a high level thing, I know, but 95% of AI projects fail. So you're seeding the market already to say, hey, AI experiment isn't working out too well, guys, but our approach is. So it's a great way for them to kind of really hone in on their story and their value proposition. So that serves them, I think, very well, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and to your point, John, I'd say the new bots that they introduced, one was the exact forecasting bot that they said has the highest levels of forecasting accuracy in the industry. And then the other was the intraday spike bot, which I thought was really cool. So, throughout the day, there might be spikes for whatever reason. And you can really look at the root cause of the spike and then really drill down. And it even can provide suggested actions and what to do about it. So I thought that was a pretty impressive one. But to your point, it's not, in your face, out there types of things. It's more in the background to improve operations and things like that.
Yeah, and that Spikebot really speaks to their WFM roots, right? It's what they really know. And it was a very impressive demo. We saw it both in the analyst session and on the main stage with Dave Singer. And the audience we saw it as analysts, but when the audience saw it, they just loved it. I thought they really hit a home run with that one. So we have just a few minutes left, and I do want to put the broader context in here for the Thoma Bravo acquisition and what's coming up with Calabrio. I thought Dan started right off saying that 50% of our revenues are now coming from AI. Now, you could dispute that and slice and dice it in many ways. I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that, but that sure plays well, I think, to the rationale for why they're being acquired, because they're making AI work not for their customers, just only them, but them as well, right? And that's
Yeah,
what people
so
want.
it's the question of AI infused revenue is always a challenging topic. Everything that relates to auto QA involves some kind of transcription, so it's by definition entirely AI. From the WFM standpoint, predictive modelings are not new. So it's a bit hard to make sense of the number, but there's no question that with all the customers we've seen, and like you said, there was almost a customer use case shared at every single breakout. So that was pretty impressive. And I think from my standpoint, this is what conveys the best where the activity is and where they're getting traction right now in the marketplace.
So is this acquisition healthy for the market? What do you think?
And it's very interesting. I think everybody is scratching its head or her head, figuring out what it means to the WFO, WEM market. And what's interesting is we spent a lot of time discussing on AI and automation. So I think we want to look at these as two separate streams, give them a little bit of room. Definitely best of breed players, there's two major now. There's Verint plus Calabrio and Aspect, have been impacted by the fact that in the new world, all CCaaS players embed recording, embed quality management. From a workforce management perspective, my observation is they all provide workforce management. But as soon as you have sizable deployments, let's say above 200-300 seats, I always find that customers are choosing best of breed because the nature of the problems they have to fix, the ability to accommodate different ways of working remains a tough problem. So they still have an opportunity there. And definitely with Thomas Bravo behind them, I think they can double down and execute bigger on the automation. We were providing a lot of nice comment. I personally wrestle a little bit with the terminology of bots. I think for many of us, bots refer to the old ways of doing things that nobody loved, that was scripted. So there's definitely the opportunity to refresh the story now that it's well anchored into the market and accelerate all this CX automation journey they embarked on.
Yes, they weren't able to talk about Calabrio, because it's just too soon. The deal hasn't closed, so there was no discussion about that at all. During the keynote, Dan Bodner did mention, Thoma Brava, and he said, how will Verint use the capital that we get from them? So he said, basically, we need to educate customers, but we're limited in our reach. And we're moving from the top 100 to the top 1,000 customers, and scale matters. So the infusion of cash will help them, one, innovate more, but I think the other is really go out there, do more marketing, do more sales, and really help them scale. And Bodner did say that they may use the money to acquire small AI companies to consolidate. So we'll have to see if that happens. But it's left to be said what's going to happen with the overlap with Calabrio, what's going to happen with the roadmaps and integrations, and what's going to happen with the products going forward. We just it's way too soon, so it'll be interesting to when they can talk about it.
I think you make a good point. Dan mentioned that the belief is that they do not have their fair share. I think they said once, not like long ago, that they have about 4 million seats. So 4 million agents are using at least one Verint product, which is pretty impressive. But he also mentioned that his sales organization was only able to touch roughly the top 100 accounts. So it's still the early innings of this AI journey. It takes a lot of effort from the sales standpoint, and is definitely looking at scaling the go-to-market. So very, I completely agree with your observation. Very important point. Thanks.
Yeah, and I'd say the same, guys. You know, it's just like Verint. Customers scale one at a time with their bots. And as we saw with the British example, I can't remember the name of the company, how they started small.
BT.
And sorry?
Was it BT?
It might have been them. It might have been Valaris that they had. No, it was BT. Right. Scaling from a couple of hundred agents, I think, and now going up to proof of concept, 5,000 agents. Now they want to down the rollout. But same thing, I think, with as a PE, Tom Bravo is going to say, we're going to give you money. You got to scale this business. Now you've got the tools. The good news is they've built the product. So as you say, Nicholas, it's a scale thing. Can they do it? And I think if we consider this smart money, I think that would mean that Verint is relatively, as you say, not a household name, right? They just don't resonate the way a NICE or a Genesis would. So there is room for them to, as you say, Blair, to tell that story better, up level their marketing and all the sales things and channel partnerships they need to do to get to the next level. But yeah, you know, it's almost like you by taking a Calabrio kind of off the table, so to speak, how that integration goes, yeah, we don't know. But then, as you say, if best of breed is still going to have a big role to play, well, okay, this is the biggest and best out there. So by definition, you know, they should be able to get their share of the pie, I would think, right? All right, Nicholas, last word for you, and then we're going to have to wrap it up.
Oh, I think that Verint reminded us that they were a large company
and profitable.
They number two, we definitely seen that in the last year that AI is really the top focus of every single companies in the CX space. So they're well positioned with the investment they made 2 years ago.
Good spot to end on. And I'm with you on that one 100%. I think, yeah, it's the proof point of AI shows the market that it is ready. And the longer you wait, I think Jamie said that, the longer you wait, the further behind you're going to be. All right. So with that, I think our audience comes away all the wiser. So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Nicholas and Blair and Tom in absentia. And we hope you enjoy this takeaway from the event, and we hope to see you soon on another BC Strategies podcast. All right, over and out. Bye for now, everybody.